What's going on, guys? It is Laser here with a part two weekend video update. It is 12:48 p.m. and I just got word from some of my Discord members that my video audio cut out at 25 minutes. So I went back and rewatched from the 25-minute mark to the 1 hour mark all the things that you missed. I think the best way for me to do it is I cover those topics again. So it cut off right around the risk to reward entry. So I'll go ahead and start off by talking about that. I went on to say basically that it's going to be like this. I hope it's okay. I need to be able to reference this, and I don't know if there's a way I can keep this open and that. So that's the way we're going to do this video. The risk to reward entry. Look at that, 12 degrees, beautiful. I got to go for a nice warm walk outside to enjoy that warm weather. The risk reward at 650, to be honest, I don't like it. In my opinion, I think it becomes more riskier. If you're entering here, you're betting that the 4 hour velocity will make a higher high, and then you'll get that higher low. The risk to reward increases once you get the higher low. The higher low needs to prove itself, and until it does, you need to be careful. Right now, what I see is the 4 hour is still in a downtrend, and it needs to prove itself. I'm going to allow the velocity to prove itself. So just be careful. I personally say it's not the best, given that also 650 is a big options level contract actually. So I personally don't like the risk reward entry, and my bias is that we will see that last leg lower, which will be that C wave down to 6, maybe 590. Okay, 4 hour setup in a downtrend. I already just kind of discussed that. It's making lower lows and lower highs. The ABC correction. So you guys may have saw part of that video where if we saw previously where it made a down wave A to a B to a C, and you can see that A wave, the first down move, made that first move below the 200-day moving average. It gave you a bounce, and it finally pushed lower towards the midline. That's kind of what we have right here. We have the A to the B, and that's the first move below the 200-day moving average. And potentially, if it fades, you would get the C wave actually. And then you can measure that using a trend-based Fibonacci tool, which takes you roughly to around 597, which is magically right at that $6 options level. And so perhaps 5, you would get. Did I measure that right? No, it's not quite the right scale here. Yeah, 596, maybe 57. Now, there's some confluence into 578, but we'll talk about that in a later subject. But I do believe there's going to be a C wave, which will, in my opinion, have the best risk to reward entry, actually, because that could potentially be your bottom. I'll leave it at that, the ABC correction. I think that it could be doing something along those lines. I bring you guys back to this. I was painting out, like, take a look at this. A lot of people looked at this and said, oh my God, it looks so good. And it just made a fresh low. Frustrating as hell. We do need to be, in my opinion, I think there's reason to believe that could still happen. It moved up, I think, from the bottom, from the A to the B wave, 9%. Where did it go from 542 all the way pretty much up to 593.6? Where did this A to B go? From 6 up to 650-ish. I mean, it actually did reach 660, but kind of stopped around 650. That's right around an options level. Very, very similar. It was also roughly 10%. It was actually a little bit less. And I think you would get something similar like that. That's what I believe. Now, what did we miss here? Trend line. So you guys, the next thing I wanted to bring to your attention was this trend line. Now there is a trend line here that made me. It's on a shorter time frame. It was this one. Am I drawing that right? Log. It was this one. And what it was is it's basically saying that, we moved up. This whole move was up. That was your A. This is going to be your B and your C. It was a breakdown. You could see it, and it was like a retest of that breakdown. And you can kind of almost see that exact same move in the velocity. So I just wanted to talk about that trend line. If it does get back above it, then that definitely changes things. But it is something that I was watching. I've kind of brought that forward to my Discord group as well, saying like, I think we might see a little more like lower. Honestly, NIO's hard. It humbles everybody. It's so tough to kind of nail down and get it right. I don't want to speak with 100% conviction, but that is my bias. And it's a trend line worth mentioning. And so we did see, I had a little note here, talk about how we saw this exact same setup previously. It was this A, and we talked about that already, B and C. Just understand that this was like kind of like that same trap. And I tweeted that trap. I said, I tweeted like the Game of Thrones meme reference that this was a trap, and I do believe we're in another trap. It's going to be another bear trap, and I do think it's going to be in an ABC fashion. I talked about how NIO was an exception in the market, and you guys probably noticed this, but when the market is red or downturning, NIO continues to outperform the market across the 158 stocks that I'm actually watching in my watch list. From a velocity perspective, NIO has one of the best setups actually across the market. There's not many stocks right now in all, and I track a lot. I track the Mag 7 and I track gold and silver, defense and rare earth and oil. Not many of them. Actually, I shouldn't say NIO is an exception because oil is doing pretty well and natural gas is doing pretty well. Shippers and tankers and some of the agriculture stocks are doing well because of this war. But NIO is one of the few stocks compared to the tech, because I track a lot of tech stocks and a lot of the Mag 7 stocks. It's one of the few stocks that's actually the 24 hours has been trending above the 24-hour midline for quite some time, whereas most of the other stocks have not been. So it's definitely kind of outperforming the market, and I think it's gearing up to do something a lot bigger. Weekly velocity is beautiful. We talk about this. So if we go into the weekly velocity for NIO, it broke back above the 200-day moving average. Like it's made a really, really strong move above the midline and the weekly velocity. Like this is tremendous, and it's maintained this uptrend. And it's not only the weekly velocity that's looking tremendous here, it's our monthly velocity. If you take a peek here, our monthly velocity for the second time in the history of NIO has finally curled up, and it's curled higher. Monthly velocity here, it's made a higher low. Beautiful. And if you look into the volume profile here, it's did 1.11 billion for the month of March. April, we'd be looking to do, we're still 11 days into March. What are we at? We're at 300 million. So we're about a third in. We're actually on pace to potentially beat that. And you want to see that rising volume, rising candle, and that will happen. I believe this month. This is the month that you'd want to see that. So everything looks beautiful. And this is where NIO becomes the exception in the market. Like to find a setup like this good is tremendous on the weekly setup. So we just did about the reintroduction of the green line. Okay. So we're going to go to the velocity real quick here. I want to reintroduce this idea that I brought to you guys. It's important this is actually an important part of the video, where if we draw out this green line over here, what this green line represents is where all lower high rallies on NIO would die at the green line. Right here, dead. Right here, dead. And right here, it died. Okay. And the exceptional runs where you had the bigger and larger 100% rallies, all around July and August is when they happened. When you had those really bigger runs, those happened above this green line. Now, if you notice, to take us back today, we had a setup where we had a chance to make a higher low, and it actually broke back below the green line, and now we're back up it again on a higher high. And I believe if it builds another higher low, it will be the same as last year, where you got one leg and then you'll get like another leg higher. I believe it'll be since last year, you're going to get another leg higher. Or 2 years ago, where it stopped over here and then you got another leg higher. Or even 3 years ago, where it stopped here and then you got another leg higher. It'll be very similar. So this upcoming dip Very exciting for the bulls, actually. And if you notice on those 100% rallies, I actually I forgot to share this bit. Let's do this. It'll be much faster if I just do it like that. Notice all three of those 100% rallies, and I'm going to change the color to pink. I like the color pink here for using that trend line. All three of them reached up tier. And what that would mean is if this happens and we get that higher low, we could actually, there's a lot more room for upside actually here for NIO. And I think that's going to take us up and over $8 actually. So we got to pay attention and watch to see where this is going. So that's the green line, and that's very exciting. The breakout and the first pill, here we go. This was another idea that I wanted to share with you. This is beautiful. So take a look. Are we on the log scale? We are. Notice how we had essentially, this is all one move was the breakout. This was all one move. If you labeled that, that was your breakout. And it's forming a pullback. And now here comes the confluence where that C wave may come in and you may get a tap below. Potentially, like you could see like an overextended, like, oh my God, it's over. And all it's doing is retesting that breakout. And you come and you see it come down maybe 575, 576. And so it would look like this. The price action would look something like this. And then all of a sudden you hit that bottom. And then you extend out. You would kickstart that. It would be pretty much like almost like this, down and then boom. And I think that's actually very likely. That's my bias. But I wanted to point this out to you is this, if there's any bears that are saying like, oh, it's just good, it's going to be just like, it's already proven itself from a velocity perspective that it's completely different. It's broken over the green line twice. We've broken over to this level twice now, and we're well above that. It's pink. Let me make this back to green. So bears, come on now. You're so wrong. This is totally for the bulls, guys. If you look at all of these moves, these lower highs were straight up rejections. This is different, guys. And if we get that higher low and you're short, I think you're going to be in a world of pain for NIO. Confluence. So that's the confluence I talked about. Is if it retests down here, you could get that confluence of the ABC. So I'll break that down one more time, and we'll use the trend line velocities here. So real quick, we'll do that. So take the top, and maybe it goes down. You can say it. Maybe it overextends on that C wave, and you see a 579. Maybe doesn't have to. I mean, I'd be totally okay even from 596 or even 6. Either way, you just need that. I think like that move that comes down and gives you that C wave, and off it goes. Our 24-hour is on the verge of making that higher low above the green line yet again. And if it does that, you're going to get another leg extension of this bull rally. Magnet trend line on resistance. Okay. This is an important thing to take a look at. Watch this. So if you pay attention right over here, this has been like a magnet. And as you approach these lines, you always want to be careful because it's been pretty much a brick wall. But the nice thing is when you do get those dips, as we've seen in the past before, it gets sucked right back up. So if we do see 5, you know what I say, 90, 78, 76, and that takes a few days to get there, guess where that's going to get sucked right back up to, okay? Right back up to that trend line. So it's something to watch for. This thing has been a trend line. Now, there is another trend line here as well. I've talked about in previous videos, which is the overarching, the bullish trend here, actually. This was the bearish divergence that got left behind, but it was also the resistance line that got left behind here. And I do believe at some point in time in the future, this thing will eventually rise up and retest this trend line. And I think I could even extend that a little bit more bullishly. And then you can use Elliott waves. So Mohanad, who's somebody that is in our Discord community channel and also does Elliott wave analysis, and I have his his Twitter profile in the description below. He has it measured out to like $21, and you can see kind of where, from a timeline perspective around the middle of the summer, you can see how it would actually potentially, come into the picture. Let's see here. So we just talked about that $21 target. 1 hour velocity. Okay. So the 1 hour velocity didn't quite give us the breakout that I wanted to see. So the move we had on Friday, was that the real move or was it noise? How do we know that? Well, there's no way of truly knowing, but one of the things that I always like to look for is I love to look for 2 velocity breakouts. So this would essentially be the first breakout, and the second trend line I would have drawn out. It's like this. And if you notice, I'm just going to delete that so you can watch here. If you notice, we haven't actually broken above that, and now it could, and it might, but my suspicion tells me is that we'll get that last move, that last C wave move that brings us down into 6, maybe 570 if you're lucky and you're looking to get like an awesome like last minute entry before this thing kind of explodes up. Trying to make sure I cover everything that I talked about here. I haven't done a video like this with notes, but I hope this is okay for you guys. Timeline on okay, this is important. For those of you that are holding a bag and are underwater and are like, when is this thing going to finally go back to all-time highs? Just note that NIO took approximately, and if you draw it like that, which I'm being a little bit, however generous how I'm drawing that trend line, it technically hasn't. If I were to actually draw the trend line properly and conservatively, it still hasn't broke, but that's fine. I'm just doing it like this just so you guys understand that if it's been in this downtrend for 1,600 days, and we're how far into this? We are only 238 days. Even if we were to go to halfway into that, which would be around 800 days, which is about 2.5 years, which would take you about to November. You got to give it time. If it took 4 years for us to reach a bottom, it will take 4 years, in my opinion, to reach an all-time high and a top. And your midline is right around next year, November. And if by chance this thing wants to go parabolic and get there quicker, I think maybe that might be a date that you want to look at. And so I shared this in the video to try and say, like, at some point in time in the near future, I think NIO is going to actually give you that huge move back to the all-time high. But patience is going to be required. It's not going to happen, I believe, this year. It's going to take a little bit more time. There will be a parallel channel. So I drew out a parallel channel, which was relevant. I've shared this actually before. I'll share it one more time. So we're going to draw out a parallel channel here by taking the point there, and then we drag this up, zoom out. And this is where we get our price targets from. So this was the original channel it traded in. You'll notice right before things broke down, it gave you a little bit of a retest right there. Right up here at like a $9. That was one of the lower high tests. And now that it's been basically kind of like accumulating here, the next point of spot, the reason I draw this is, are we actually going to see it overextend and you're going to get that $13, $14 test? Like, maybe. Does it support that from like, a Fibonacci point of view? I mean, yeah, you can actually like make an argument that it does. Let me see this thing. Does this work? Yeah, you can see it like that too. Almost some confluence there. I don't know if I'm doing that right. I'm not the Elliott wave guy and how I'm measuring it, but it's just something to kind of take a look at. And the reason I wanted to share this is if there's ever a scenario, which I think there will be, when NIO finally breaks above here and comes back and retests, well, what is going to likely happen is when it breaks back into the channel, that's when you get your parabolic move. So when it gets to 15, that's where I believe it'll go parabolic and you'll get back to all-time highs and you'll see 80. That's the requirement, in my opinion. And maybe that's a little drastic. Maybe more like this. $80, $83 by 2029, 2030. I think that's a very realistic target here. I share that because I know some of you guys are underwater. And if you're patient, I think this thing will actually be super duper rewarding. And that's what I wanted to share on NIO. BABA, bullish divergence, but the weekly is weak. Let me show you. And it's a stark comparison compared to NIO. We'll start with the weekly. The weekly actually made a bearish divergence right here. Bearish divergence, price rising higher, velocity. It means like an equal high, but slightly lower high. And it also made a lower high right over here. And notice we're below the midline. It looks weak. In comparison, NIO looks way stronger. It's a totally different weekly setup. But on the 24 hours, it looks good. It's showing the exact same signs of a bottoming sign that we saw back in October and November. So if we take a look right over here where it made lower lows, but the velocity was making higher lows, specifically in this little section right there. It did that. That's when it got a nice big move. And where did it top out? If you use a Fibonacci trend line, you'll see that it topped. Oops, wrong tool. I meant to use the trend. Oh, wait, not that one. This one. Fib. Sorry. It topped roughly around the golden pocket. So if the same thing is to happen from top to bottom, your golden pocket's around 160. And so I do believe a move to 160 is in the works. Something along the lines of this. So if you're Baba Bull, there's some green around the corner. Definitely. And it made a bullish divergence right there. Notice the price made a lower low right on that day on April 7th, but the velocity was making higher lows. Sellers are tapped out, and we're about to get that move above the 200-day moving average, mean reversion move back above the midline. Because our weekly's busted, the velocity looks busted to me. In order for the weekly velocity to improve, you want to see that nice big bounce back above the midline and a retest with the higher low, which essentially is the move to 160, back down, and away you go. That's going to be the best case scenario here where things start looking really, really good for Baba. But so far, I think there's going to be a capped run for how high you can actually get with Baba. BIDU, the weekly looks better. Can I show you why the weekly looks better? BIDU, actually, the most recent high made a higher high. Baba's most recent high was a lower high. BIDU, from the most recent high, it made one swoop move down, one little down move, and it went from a higher high to a lower low. Where have we seen that? Go to NIO, 24 hours. And it's not the same thing because it's on a 24-hour velocity, but it the same thing applies, where it made a higher high and it looked like it was dead. You got a lower low, and during that time in my Discord group, I was telling everybody, like, guys, this thing still hasn't made the lower high. You know, you can't say this is over. And there were people who were saying that this thing is over. It's going all the way back down to 3. It's over, and it made a higher high. So I take it back to BIDU, the weekly. Is it going to do the same thing? Are you going to get a scenario where you haven't even gotten a lower high yet? And if this earning comes up, maybe that's the catalyst, and it just pushes up and gives you a higher high. And that's like this big trap. It's like this big trap, and then you get this big move. To me, BIDU has a better setup longer term on the weekly time frame. And on the 24-hour time frame, if I were to race it, it did not give you a bullish divergence that Baba did, but it is forming a higher low. If it takes out the low at 105, maybe it does that next week, and you get that wick, that's your bullish divergence. And then you're where you would at least expect minimum on BIDU. If you're a BIDU bull, you'd be wanting to watch for 144.73. JD bullish, aiming for 32.37, long-term 40. Quickly, JD, I like this trend line that I have here. I have an overall overarching trend line right up there. I don't know if I can draw that. That's where you get like that eventually bigger move that comes into play here. JD actually just gave you a higher low above the midline. It looks like it's ready to explode, JD, and push higher. I called it for a long time ago that I believe the target that you're going to get is 32, which is right at that golden pocket. And it's also right where you can see there's a resistance on that parallel channel. The weekly velocity, it's getting better. It's looking better. What looks so good about it? Let me delete some of these drawings. You can't see it. It made a higher high right over here. And I think it'll continue to make a higher high until it gets to 32.61. So it'll probably drag out a little bit more. But I do believe at some point you're going to want it to come back, return, and make that higher low setup. It needs that higher low on the weekly, as does BABA. So I think it might be a short-lived rally right about 32. You might get the extension to 34. But I think at some point it's going to come back down. And when it makes that higher low on that weekly, that's when you're going to get up to 45 and 40, like $40 to $45. That's when you're going to see those higher price targets on JD. KWEB, the weekly looks broken as well. So, and I think it could be forming basically a inverted head and shoulders here. Golden pocket takes you to 38, which is surprisingly right around here. If you look at the weekly velocity, it's completely below the midline. I'm not too happy with it being all the way down there. Like, you can't call a confident bottom until a higher low. So if this is showing, and it is showing signs of wanting to reverse, same way that BABA was on the 24 hours. So I do see a move up to 38, which would be your right shoulder forming. But because the weekly's broken, even if it looked like this, I think it's going to form a lower high on your weekly velocity. And what it'll likely do is it'll need to come right back down and hopefully form a higher low, bottom out, and then go. So it's going to be a capped upside run on KWEB. And potentially it'll look like an inverted head and shoulders, but it'll actually have an honest shot to build a higher low here. I think most people will actually, at the time when it goes up and comes back down, they're going to say, oh my God, it's an inverted head, or sorry, it's a real head and shoulders. It's going to come crashing down. And the more likely outcome is that it'll actually build a higher low and then it'll run. That's what I believe is more likely to happen. Look at all the things we're talking about here. Even with this list, this video is like crazy long. Hang Seng Index, 24 hours showing strength, 28,000 on the menu, but will likely play out how the last bottom played out. Weekly velocity needs way more work. Okay, so it's kind of in the same boat as KWEB, the weekly velocity. Let's delete. So if we take a look here, and I'll just delete this too. If you look at the weekly velocity, it's a lower low. So for it to run, it needs to bounce and still give you a higher low. It's very rare to kind of get a bottom from a lower low, but let's find out and play it by ear. I do believe if you look at the 24 hours, it's showing signs of a reversal. It made a higher low. It wasn't a bullish divergence, but it was a higher low. And now we broke above the 200-day moving average. To me, it makes sense that if it comes up into the golden pocket, it puts 26,000 on the menu, potentially all the way up into 28,000. And at some point in time in the near future, if this thing could recover, it will go to 31, 32,000. I think what might happen is you're going to see something like this, and I'm going to use the bar pattern tool. Where is it? It's right here. Notice how long it took before it pushed to the very top end of that channel. I think you can get something like this, up to 28, and then it kind of consolidates, and before you kind of get the final push into like 31, which takes you back over that high, which makes complete sense to me. 24 hours is telling us like it wants to move. It made a higher high now. It might want to come back down and build a higher low and then push higher into that mid channel, potentially 28. I like that. Before I review the SPY, because that's not part of our analysis, we'll review the Dixie. Dixie is interesting. It's breaking down. Dixie made a 24-hour bearish divergence. As you can see here, lower highs, but the price made higher highs. And I think it's actually possibly making a move to, towards potentially 95, 96, just bottoming out. But when you look at the weekly's still showing strength. It just broke above the midline and it made a higher high. And if you zoom out, I could see 107. And if you zoom out even further, I think I did this one time. I stole this from someone else. You have this magnet. Okay. And so at some point in time, let's just say it does give you the move down. I think you can see a big move actually happening on the US dollar, where you could see it go rise to 120, 125. And everybody's telling you, oh my God, the dollar's gonna, it's gonna crash. And everyone's saying all these things like the US dollar is gonna crumble. And maybe they're right, actually, to be honest. But they usually come out with those narratives right at the very bottom. And what does that make people do? It makes people very scared. And it makes people say, well, I better put my money in the stock market. So people dump all their money in the stock market because they don't want to sit in the cash position. And what happens? Stock market comes down, or it crashes, or it corrects while the US dollar rises. It always gets, the narrative is always the worst near a bottom. And you're closer to a bottom here on the US dollar than you are on a top. And there are some people that have legitimate theses saying like, no, it's going to freaking crash. The US dollar is going to go down. And sure, maybe. Or it's just consolidating before it's making a bigger move. And that, I believe, is my thesis actually here. We'll talk about oil quickly. 3 more things before I wrap the video up. We're going to talk about oil, my thesis on oil, on the bottom not being in. If I go to the 24-hour velocity, you'll notice, and I'm going to erase everything. You'll notice it made a lower high, but so did the price. So that's not necessarily bearish. It wasn't a bearish divergence. And I believe a bearish divergence will form. I believe at some point in time, the price will eventually rise itself up and take out the high at 117, but it'll do so on a lower velocity. So it'll look something like this. Okay. And maybe it looks like that, but I just want to see it. Maybe it doesn't look exactly like that. Maybe it comes down more and then it gives you a bounce. But at some point in time, I do see in the near future, I do see 117 being taken out, but taken out on lower velocity. And that would be a top signal, something you don't want to ignore in the 24 hours. And if it does something like that, it actually did that 2 years ago. Where did it do that? If you look 2 years ago during the Ukraine war, price grinded up over 6 months. The oil price rose up for 6 months, but the velocity made a lower high. And I think something similar needed to play out. And you'll notice this was like kind of like the bear market, and it formed the top here, and then it just, since then that's when it crumbled. We don't have that yet, and I think we still need that for oil. And so for those of you who are watching this closely, this Iran-USA war, I do think there's going to be another leg or another, push higher into oil first before things are fully topped. I don't see it on a velocity perspective yet, and it's still in an uptrend, even though it made a higher low, a lower high. A downtrend would be if it made a lower low, but it still didn't make also a bearish divergence. Now, it doesn't have to, but that's just what I believe, because it kind of makes sense from a narrative perspective that this thing is not going to be as easy as some people are making it out to be. So we talked about oil. The SPY, from a technical perspective, looks beautiful. Here's one thing that I've never actually quite seen on the SPY is that it made a solid move without giving a pullback. It made one solid giant move. Now, if I were to measure that move, it's almost the same move that we got from a velocity perspective from the April bottoms. But notice what it had to do. It had to come down and give you a higher low. And I think that's when Trump said I don't know when he said it was a good time to buy, but it did come back down and retraced to almost the golden pocket. Okay. You do need to make a higher low for us to know, like, how do we know it didn't make a higher low yet? It didn't make a higher high either. That was your previous high. That's still a potentially lower high. And if it does this, I think what's most likely to happen is it'll come out and it'll make another higher low. And maybe that comes around 656, maybe 648. I think there's some gaps in there too. If I turn this off, you might even see, look, there's a gap right there, right at the 3.8, 656. You need that higher low. Okay. Like, this was all bulls. Let's see if there's any bears left in the tank first. You got to respect the bears. You can't just call a bottom without seeing a higher low. We haven't seen it, but from what I've seen is this move is absolutely tremendous. It's back above the midline. That is strength. It just went above the midline today. And you don't normally see that unless there's a ton of strength, actually. So That is fantastic, and it's breaking the velocity trend line here. That represents resistance that got left behind, and you can actually draw this out, and you can say, okay, there's your resistance, and like a magnet, eventually it's going to come to 719, 720, or however long it takes. You're going to tag the top end of that for the S&P 500, which is going to have a tailwind for NIO. It seems that when the market goes higher, NIO goes higher. When the market goes lower, doesn't matter. NIO holds steady. NIO is doing its own thing. It's in a category of its own. The last thing I wanted to share, and this is just super quick, is Bitcoin sitting right at resistance. Right at resistance. It's unbelievable. It's kissing it. And if you go back to the last bear market, am I on the right scale? Regular? Yeah, I did this out wrong. Notice that the last time I did that, it broke out from 19,000 up to 21,000, and then it still gave you a lower low. So that maybe that's the case. If it breaks out, I think the same thing will happen. Maybe it breaks out and it goes sideways, and then it tags down, takes the low out. Maybe you get 58, and that's your bottom. But if it doesn't break out here, and this is like the top, and you get a rejection on Bitcoin, 30, like you're going to the bottom of that channel, which is like 35. Like it's rough. So let's see what happens. To be honest, everyone's kind of getting bullish on Bitcoin here. It hasn't proven itself, and it's at a very critical junction as Iran and USA are facing the negotiations. So that's it. That's the part that was missing in the video. How long did I take? 36 minutes. So 36 plus the 25. Yeah, it was like an hour. Even after doing it all over again, I wasn't able to make it any shorter. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to smash a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube video. I dropped actually in the description below 2 people, Aaron trending on YouTube. He's actually in our Discord group, and he engages with the community, and he has a huge YouTube channel, drops YouTube channels every single day. Definitely check him out if you haven't already. And then Mohamed, he's got about 500 followers on X. Make sure you follow him. He's dropping his Elliott wave analysis, and it's some of the best Elliott wave analysis that I've seen to date. He's been doing it for a long time, and he's also in our community in Discord. So be sure to show him some love. Give him a follow if you are interested in following his analysis. And that is it. That is all. If I missed something, I apologize for the audio delay. Please ask your questions and comments. Leave it in the comment section below. And that's it. That's all. Thanks, guys, and have a wonderful weekend.